What's up, guys? This is the Dirt Bike Channel podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Brotherson, and today I've got a pretty awesome topic here. I'm super excited about this. We're going to bring on Bill Hannon. He is a strength and conditioning coach, and he's also a dirt bike rider, which I think makes this a pretty interesting episode here because you don't often hear the two kind of intersecting. And we want to talk to Bill today to find out some of his ideas for us as dirt bikers, what we can do to be more in shape and be stronger on the bike and have more endurance. And it should just be a super fun podcast. So I'm going to get him on the line here and introduce him, and we'll get going. Just by the way, though, if you shop with Rocky Mountain ATV, please use my links down in the description. You can find my links in the description of this podcast or any of my YouTube videos. I have these links with Rocky Mountain ATV. It won't cost you anything, but you will be supporting Dirt Bike Channel if you use those links, which I would really, really appreciate. So, and enough of that. Let's see if we can get Bill on the line.
Hey, Kyle, how's it going?
Hey, Bill, how's it going, man?
Good. How are you?
Very good. Well, I want to introduce Bill Hannon here. Bill Hannon is a strength and conditioning coach. He is an engineer that has turned into a strength and conditioning coach. It's funny because Bill reached out to me clear back in, November. Oh, and by the way, if you want to follow Bill, you can follow him on Instagram. It's at @engineered_strength. Is that right, Bill?
Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. He's also written different articles with different publications. He's designed training programs. He is an online coach. He's actually even building his own coaching right now and just kind of building out his side of the business. It's pretty exciting. The other thing that I wanted to mention as I'm introducing Bill here is the reason why I wanted to invite him on this podcast is not just because he knows how to train people for the strength side of things. He's also a dirt bike rider. He's an avid dirt bike rider. He's been riding for longer than I have. He's been riding for 20 years. Isn't that right, Bill?
Yeah, around 20 or so.
Somewhere in there. And that kind of makes him uniquely qualified to talk about these things because there's so many, I know other coaches out there that can teach you how to lift weights and how to build muscle, build strength, build endurance. But there's not that many guys that understand kind of the nuances that a dirt biker is looking for. And so that's why I thought it would be an interesting conversation. So yeah, he reached out to me back in November. He said, "Hey, look, are you interested in doing a podcast talking about these things?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. I am interested in that." And then we kind of went back and forth a little bit, and he sent me a 3-page outline, and that's when I knew that he had me hooked because some of the things he said, and I want to get into all of this stuff, but here are the two things that really, really hooked me in his outline. And I think that you guys, the listeners out there, can relate to this. He said that a fast rider, or really, any speed, if you're on a dirt bike, you're working very hard physically, but you also you have to maintain providing precise input controls into the bike, and that combination is rare. That combination of power output, but also like fine motor skills and gross motor skills, those are kind of rare. And then the last one that he got me on, which was where it kind of hit home to me, he said, "Hey, look, think about a thought experiment. Imagine if you weighed the same weight that you do now, but you were 10 times stronger. Imagine how much easier your life would be." And I started thinking about that, Bill, and that's really where you hooked me, because I thought, if I could increase some strength, there's probably a whole lot of other benefits that would come off of that. And so I just thank you for reaching out and look forward to talking today.
Sure, no problem. Yeah, here's the scary thing. That outline was probably 5 pages of the first draft, and I had to cut it way down.
Well, it's a ton of good info.
And thanks for having me on, Kyle. Like I've been watching your channel for a while, and I love your content, and it's like we talked about yesterday. Like you just put out a lot of good stuff that's just straightforward opinions. Like you don't BS a lot. It's straight to the point. Like, hey, I'm riding this bike. This is what I think right now. That really appeals to me, not just as a guy that rides moto and a customer of the people that are selling bikes, but it's logical. There's no fluff to it. So I'm really excited to be on today and talk to you because I'm a big fan of the channel and a big fan of what you do.
Well, that's cool. And we got a chance to catch up yesterday on the phone, just kind of bouncing some ideas off one another. And I knew that we'd have some good content. I kind of wanted to start off like this though. And I want to get into your background, but what I really want from you today is some ideas on what I can do to change my workouts. And I think a lot of the other dirt bikers are going to want to get some ideas too, because I got looking at I keep an Excel spreadsheet of all of my workouts. And I'm not like a gym rat or anything. I do all this from my home. I bought a rower about 4 or 5 years ago. And I've mostly rode these meters, but I also have a skier and some different things. And I have rode, not that anyone is counting, but I have rode 4,784,884 meters as of yesterday. And I am looking to change some things up because I feel like I've kind of hit like a little bit of a plateau is not the right word, but I'm kind of up against a wall and I feel like I need to change some things up. So this is super timely for me because I'm going, look, I'm doing all this stuff, I'm working out, but maybe I need to work out smarter. Maybe there's some different workouts that I should be doing. Maybe I should be changing up the intervals or changing up the time and the distances and all of these things. So it's super timely for me, and I hope a lot of other people get some good info in there. So maybe you can give us, Bill, if you can give us like kind of an introduction with your background with engineering and how then that moved over into strength and conditioning, because there's a super interesting story there. Maybe we could just kind of start with that and see a little bit of your background and also your moto background too.
Sure. Yeah. Like you said in the intro, I kind of took a weird path to get where I'm at now as a strength and conditioning coach, and went to college for engineering and did well all through college and got a good job, and moved out of college up to Chicago and worked for a big defense contractor and was basically designing parts that went in fighter jets and helicopters and bombers and stuff like that. And it was like I said, it was a good job. I liked it, but I didn't love it. It was good security, good paycheck and all that. But, in the back of my mind, it's like, I'm not sure if this is something that I can do for 40 or 45 years. So transition to, I met my wife, we got married, she's a chiropractor, and we had a chance to kind of move back to my hometown area and buy her a practice. And that kind of came up, and, we decided to make the jump and move back to small town Indiana from the Chicago suburbs. And I took another engineering job, and, everything was going fine. And, as a chiropractor, she's treating a lot of people that are in pain. They have back pain, joint pain, whatever. And she's saying to me, like, these people are not going to get better unless they get stronger. And she kind of has like the exercise background too. Her undergrad was in exercise science. She was kind of a gym rat like I was, all through high school and college. And, we enjoyed working out at that point too. And I was kind of coming off of a stage where I had gone through, I had gotten to the point where you're saying you're at now with your workouts. It's like, I'm doing the same thing over and over. I feel like I'm in a rut. I feel like I'm not improving anymore. Yeah. At the same time, I'm getting older too. So it's like, the things that I was doing when I was in my 20s and early 30s aren't working as well. I'm gaining weight faster than I ever have. And it's like, holy crap, what's going on here? And I started really researching like, okay, what's the best way for an adult to train? Somebody that's serious about this stuff, that doesn't care all that much anymore about the biceps to impress the girls and all that stuff. Not that there's anything wrong with that. Like, we all want to look good and everything. But I was looking for the quote unquote answer. What's the best way to train? And started reading all these books and articles, and CrossFit was just kind of blowing up at that time. And I knew that I also wanted to be strong. I'd kind of grown up strong, grew up as a farm kid, playing sports all through middle school, high school, and college. Like, my big advantage was I was stronger than almost everyone that I had to compete against.
Nice.
So I knew as an athlete, like, that gave me an advantage. So the idea that I needed to be strong was still there too. And, so my wife's saying like, hey, why don't you, you're learning all this stuff yourself. You're learning how to teach this stuff and coach this stuff. Like, why don't you take this handful of clients that would really benefit from that type of training and start training them? And I did. And it was, that's how I got my start. I had, roughly 8 or 10 clients, and I would train people in the morning from, 5 to 6. And then I drive 45 minutes down to my job, work an 8 to 10 hour day, drive home 45 minutes, and then coach for another 2 or 3 hours. And that was, it was like really cool because I'm doing this new thing, but at the same time, it's like, man, I'm working these 16-hour days or whatever it ended up being. And it's like, I can't do this much longer.
Yeah.
We've got to figure out which way I'm going to go. And it just kind of happened to be at a time that the project that I was working on in engineering was transitioning. And it was like we were kind of wrapping it up. And, they had told me like, after this is over, you're going to go work on this other project. Well, the other thing wasn't something I was interested in. And, I was picking up clients left and right without even trying. And I said, well, let's try this. If you guys are willing to let me go part-time, I'll go part-time, and I'm going to start, picking up my coaching practice. So long story short, I finished up that project that I was working on. They didn't have another project for me to jump on that I was all that interested in. I said, call me back when you get some more work that's right for me. And I never heard from them again.
Yeah.
And just, ran with the coaching thing. And that was back in 2013 or 14. And, I've been a full-time coach since then. So, it's definitely a kind of a weird path to get to be a strength and conditioning coach. Most people go to college and get an exercise science degree or something like that. And then, there's all kinds of certifications out there that you can get and, go and do that kind of thing and work as a personal trainer for a while or start your own gym or whatever. But, I kind of went, a roundabout way and was able to jump into a pretty successful coaching practice right away, and then got into the online coaching. And that, I kind of got in at the right time for a company that was really growing, and moved my way up with that company, and eventually worked as director of operations for a few months, and then quickly moved up from there to vice president. Developed a lot of new systems and programs for that company. And then at the end of last year, I just, decided it was time to go do my own thing, and I'm writing a book and stuff. So I've got, kind of a lot of irons in the fire, but it's an exciting time, and, it's a lot of interesting stuff going on in coaching and online coaching. So yeah, that's kind of the story as to how I got where I'm at. And, a lot of people ask me like, do you feel like going through all that the way you did, like going into engineering was a waste? Like, do you feel like you wasted all that time in college and the money? And it's like, no, not at all. Cause I use the principles that I learned in engineering almost as much now as I did when I was designing parts for fighter jets.
Oh, that's cool.
And that kind of blows people's minds. It's like, how can that be? And it's like, well, engineering is a different type of field. The education you get is teaching you how to learn and how to solve problems versus like how maybe just to memorize a bunch of stuff.
Oh, okay. So instead of political science, where you just learn about what happened, 50 years ago in politics and how that might affect us today, with engineering, you learn how to think, right? Problem solve is what you're saying. And,
yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Yep. And I'm a mechanical engineer. So the physical aspects, the problem solving specifics to mechanical engineering really helps me out with trying to figure out like, what's wrong with the way that guy is moving when he's doing that exercise. And, I can just kind of see stuff that takes some other people a little bit longer to see, just because I've been trained to do that and
That's
had to do that with, the mechanisms that I was designing to do, some other physical job in an aircraft. But now it's just, applying that to the human form as they're squatting with a barbell on their back.
Well, that's good. So tell us, because I'm looking at your Instagram feed here. You guys should go check that out. But it's engineered_strength. There's a lot of weightlifting in here, but there's also dirt bikes in here. I see weightlifting, family, dirt bikes. I've seen a couple guns in here, and I'm going, this guy seems like he's legit. He's got it figured out.
Yeah, the Instagram thing is like hard for me to figure out, like trying to run it as a business page. Like, how much of my should I put my dirt bike stuff on here? I'm a strength coach.
Hey, you just do it. It helps us to see that you're well-rounded too, though. That's what I like.
Yep. That's true. And it's, you got to be true to yourself, right? So if you can't do that, then nobody else will trust you. But Yeah, with the riding stuff, like I kind of did that backwards too. I didn't start riding until I was like 21 or 22. I always wanted a dirt bike, but I don't know if my parents were afraid of dirt bikes or it was just like we didn't have a ton of money. But I'd get to ride a 4-wheeler every once in a while and just like loved it, and just like beg for a dirt bike all the time. And it's like, no, we can't do that. So the first thing on 2 wheels, motorized thing on 2 wheels that I got to ride was a moped, and that we tore that thing up pretty quick. And then, I didn't have an actual motorcycle until, like I said, I was about 22 years old. Just got out of college, making more money than I've ever had in my life. So I just, just went on this spending spree, bought a new truck, bought a new Harley, got into the riding thing. And, I had friends that rode, but I wanted, I didn't really, I liked riding and doing like the Sunday cruises and stuff like that, just cruising around. But I wanted to go fast. So I bought some sport bikes, I bought a couple of Ducatis and got into that, started doing track days and stuff. And, like most kids grow up riding a dirt bike and then they kind of graduate to the sport bike. And then once they turn 60 or whatever, then they go buy the Harley. Well, like the more I rode and the more track stuff and racing stuff that I started doing, it's like, well, I got to find a cheaper way to do this because crashing a Ducati is not cheap. And actually got into supermoto first. I went and watched the practice day, rode out to the practice day on one of my Ducatis, watched those guys riding on their, KTMs and DRZs and all kinds of stuff. And instantly knew like, okay, that's what I want to do. I went home, found a DRZ to buy and, just started doing track days on that thing. There was a little kart track that was local to us that, let's go pay $20 and ride all day long. And did some supermoto racing for 2 or 3 seasons. And then, that led me more into the dirt side of things. Because if you want to be good at supermoto, like most of the guys that were really, really fast at supermoto had, some kind of motocross or enduro background. So, I bought some dedicated dirt bikes and started riding at the off-road park as much as I could. And, found that I enjoyed that just as much as the supermoto. Plus it's cheaper. And, at that point it's like, we're gotten married and started having kids. So the cost factor was definitely a big part of it. And, that's kind of been the story since then. It's like been, I ride supermoto when I can. I'm building a supermoto bike for this season, hopefully to race again. But, most of my riding time is in the dirt now. We've got a family farm that's close with a few hundred acres and some woods and stuff. So, get out there as often as I can, and the kids are getting into it. So it's a really fun time to see how quickly they're able to progress on the bike and have fun. And, even with my little 3-year-old boy, like he, every day, like he asks, like, can we get the dirt bike out? It's like, no, it's, we can't do it today, buddy. It's raining. But it's like, it's a really cool time to see their passion and excitement for the sport grow and be able to give that to them and share it with them. So that's kind of my backwards moto background as well. I do everything backwards.
That's cool. I can relate to that. I didn't even get into dirt bikes until I was 28, so I'm even a later starter than you are. But the interesting thing that I wanted to kind of delve into now is just kind of like, tell us, as a strength and conditioning coach, when you get a client that their passion is dirt bikes, because everyone's got different passions. You mentioned CrossFit, and everyone has a different reason for wanting to work out or get stronger. When you have a client that comes to you talking about dirt bikes, what's different about them from your average client, and how do you do an intake? What are the types of things that differentiate a dirt biker, or even is there anything that differentiates us from the average client of yours?
Sure. And that's a good question too. And I was thinking about this because we talked a little bit about this yesterday, and it's like, the way I can explain this is, a good coach is really going to get to learn, like, who the client is, what do they want to do? What's their lifestyle like? How much time they actually have to train and work out and do this stuff. But the main thing you want to talk to them about is like, what are your goals? Like, what do you want to be able to do? What do you need to be able to do the things that you enjoy in life and, your sport or your hobby or even your job? And a good coach will sit down with you and ask you all these questions and, get all the, what's your age, what's your sex, what's your training history like? Are you pretty fresh, or have you lived a hard life and you got bad knees and a bad back and everything's kind of beat up? And all that stuff kind of comes into like this big picture as to, okay, who is this client? What do they want to do? What is their training going to need to be like? And it's kind of a weird, the strength and conditioning industry is strange. Like there's a lot of stuff out there that is just kind of people throwing spitballs at the wall to see what sticks, and they're just trying to sell stuff. And the way I thought about this that people would be able to relate to on your channel is like, imagine that, some moto dealer from 2 states over just gets your phone number and cold calls you and says, Kyle, I've got the perfect bike for you. And it's like, well, how could that, how would he know? Like, he doesn't know who you are. He doesn't know where you ride or the type of riding that you do, or if you like 2 strokes or if you like 4 strokes or what kind of tires you like or any of that stuff. He's just trying to sell you a bike. So there's the analogy with the strength and conditioning world is there's a lot of people out there that are just trying to sell programs or training or coaching without any recognition of who is this client that's standing in front of me and what are their actual physical needs and how am I going to have to train him to actually provide him benefit in what he's paying for and get him better at what he needs to do to be better at his hobby, his sport, his job. So that's kind of like the first step in any relationship that I have with a client is like, you sit down and just talk to them, get to know them a little bit, figure out what do they want to do and who they are.
I love that. That seems like the engineer in you trying to figure out what the challenges are, figure out what the problem is. And I love also thinking about, figuring out if he's had a hard life, if he's been a runner or if he was a firefighter or something and he's got bad knees or some of the things like this. And then you can kind of tailor the workouts based off of those needs. Or even if they want to put on bulk. Obviously, not a lot of dirt bikers want to put on a lot of bulk. And that's something else that you really want to be sensitive of, is building out a program for somebody that's going to get them the maximum amount of benefit for their hobby or their prescribed purpose, whatever they're doing. So
yeah, and that's kind of like the next step is like you talk to them and you figure out what their goals are, and then you as the coach have to go back and do your homework and say like, okay, his goal is to be able to ride all day long without getting tired, without having to stop every, 15, 20 minutes and catch a water break, catch a breather, not feel just wasted 2 or 3 days after a day long ride like that. That's his goal. What are the specific physical improvements that I need to target to allow him to be able to do all that stuff? And that's really most people don't even sit down and do the goals, coaching wise. And then almost, I'd say 99% of coaches won't actually try and figure out like, okay, what are these specific things that I need to target? Do I need to target strength or aerobic performance or anaerobic performance? Which of those is actually important? They're already just saying like, oh, here's this method that I like to use. And they just kind of throw it at you and, you're going to improve somewhat. But is it going to be optimal? Is it going to be the best bang for your buck and get you the most for your dollar? No. So that's kind of like that next step is like, and we need to figure out like, okay, exactly what type of riding are you going to do? And what does that mean for you physically? Do you need to be strong? Do you need to have the cardio endurance of a marathoner, or you look more like a sprinter? And there's so many different varieties of riding. And, that's one of the other things, not only are we working hard on the bike and having to control the bike and put these very precise inputs into the bars and into the controls, but there's also a lot of variance between, maybe today I'm riding, really slow and tight, switchbacks. And then tomorrow I'm riding something fast and flowy. Well, the physical needs for those two types of training are quite a bit different.
Yeah.
So we got to look at those things and figure out what's going to be the most important thing to train. And then how do we fit that into, your normal lifestyle and schedule. I'll say this, the number one thing that gets discounted for riders, and you already brought this up, is the strength thing. And, people are almost afraid of strength training, in the riding community. Because they're afraid that they're going to just beef up and end up looking like Lou Ferrigno or something like that. Like he's a giant dude. And it's like this kind of a weird misconception a lot of people have is everybody that goes to the gym and trains with dumbbells and barbells just gets super huge. And it's like, well, that's not true. And I know it's not true because I've spent a lot of time in gyms, and there's tons and tons and tons of people that are spending more time than I do that don't ever get any bigger. So, it's not like you go in there and, you touch a barbell and you just, instantly gain 50 pounds and you're muscle bound and you're too heavy for your bike. That's not the case. And the thought experiment that you brought up is, an important concept for people to think about is okay, what is strength really? It's our ability to push or pull on something. It's our ability to resist gravity when it's trying to pull us down to the ground. So if I could instantly get, if I could snap my fingers or wave a magic wand and get 2 or 3 times stronger than I am right now, everything that I do in my life would be easier. Carrying the groceries, carrying the kids, loading my bike into the truck, standing up on the bike while I'm riding, all that stuff instantly gets easier. And then the other thing that comes in is well, is it actually possible to do that? Can you get stronger without getting bigger? And the answer to that is also yes. Now, you may gain, a little bit of weight. If you go from 165 to 175, but your squat strength and your leg strength and your core strength, they all double or triple, yeah, you gain some weight, but your ability to control the bike and stand up on the bike and do all that other stuff is going to get much, much better. And it's going to vastly offset that small amount of weight gain that happens. Here's the other funny thing that riders are concerned about how much they weigh. And it's I think maybe this comes from cycling. And, a lot of the guys that are into fitness and cycling and stuff, they're very concerned with, their weight, because if they're riding on hills, they're working with less than 1 horsepower. Yeah. So if you gain 10 pounds, your weight to horsepower ratio changes a decent amount. But, we're riding machines that have, 20, 30, 50 horsepower easily. And it's we gain 10 pounds, which is less than, for most people, it's going to be way less than 10% of overall weight. And it's you got to think about well, am I really going to be down on performance? Am I using that much performance of the bike that I'm riding right now? And usually it's the answer to that is no. Right. Unless you're riding a small displacement bike on a road race track or something like that, where you're truly wide open throttle quite a bit of the way around the track, you're not using all the horsepower of that bike. And, you could say a large weight gain is going to affect suspension performance and just handling it and stuff like that. But most of the time, if we need to go faster, all we got to do is, twist the right grip a little bit more. There's power on demand if we need it. And most of us aren't using all the power of our bikes, even, a small percentage of the time. Yeah. And, I know that's my case. Certainly riding I'm riding the 450 right now. And it's I like riding it because it does have the power that's fun, but it's I don't need this. I could survive just fine on the 250 4-stroke if I needed to.
Yeah. You're what? You're 6'1", 2, what are you, 260-ish somewhere?
Yeah, probably heavier than that, but we won't say.
I'm just looking at some of these pictures and I'm going, so this guy is built like a linebacker, and I want to get into that a little bit later because it was one of our other kind of topics. But something that you said kind of in the middle there, you might not even remember saying this, but it really struck me hard. You talked about maybe their goal, this client, maybe one of their goals is just not to be so sore after a ride. I remember 5-6 years ago, it was probably maybe even 6 or 7 years ago. I went on a 2-day ride trip with a couple buddies, and I was so freaking sore. Like day 2, 3, 4 after that ride trip, I was so sore I could barely walk. I remember just kind of staggering around the office in those days following that, and I felt like I was 90 years old. And the funny thing is, as I've gotten stronger and as I've gotten in better shape and better riding shape from a number of different things, I can now go on these ride trips. I'm almost never sore after a ride trip, and I'm talking multi-day ride trips. You know, it might be 3-4 days where we're riding 200 miles, 250 miles of hard single track, and I don't come back sore. And is that a benefit? Would you say that's more of a benefit, or that's a symptom of benefit, symptom, whatever you want to say, of being stronger, or just being in better shape, or the two connected? And is this something that people can look forward to if they start working out, they get their training regimen better? Are they going to be less sore after some of these rides?
Yeah, I think it definitely makes a difference. And it's, I think you're right. It's both being stronger, and that's going to make a big difference in terms of like the soreness in your legs and your back and shoulders and arms and stuff like that. Being in shape definitely helps, like, conditioning, cardio conditioning, anaerobic conditioning definitely helps as well. Probably not as much of a difference in, how sore you are. But then the other thing that goes along with that is, like, there's stuff that we do on the bike that we just can't replicate, like in the training room, in the weight room, or whatever. Just, like the way we use our hands, the way we use our feet and stuff like that. Like, you're always going to be sore from that type of stuff, like when it's new to you again. So, like, if it's been a year and you go out and do one of those 2-day rides, like no matter what training you've been doing, like your hands are probably going to be sore, your feet will be sore. You'll have like little aches and pains just because your body isn't used to doing that. But if you do 2 or 3 of those type of rides a month, like, by the time you've done the 3rd or 4th one, it's like your body's used to it again. And that's a big concept that, we talked about, like that's how training basically works. The same way that we get used to those riding discomforts and stuff, basically what your body is doing is like, oh, this new thing is a stress to me. It's a physical stress. So your body is amazing in its ability to recognize what that stress is and then recover from it and adapt so that your performance level goes up. And a good example of this is, like, the calluses that we get on our hands. So if you get like a really hard day of riding and your gloves are either old or beat up, or you got a new pair of gloves that just don't fit right or whatever, and you get really bad calluses or really bad blisters on your hands. Well, if that happens, 2 or 3 times in a row, like, it hurts less and less and less. And then your hands start to build up calluses. And it's like, so your body has recognized this stress that keeps happening to your hands, and its adaptation to that is that it builds up a tougher layer of skin so that when you do another ride like that, it's not a big deal. Like, you don't actually hurt your hands again.
Yeah.
And the same thing happens like when we weight train, when we do, consistent rowing or running, or, even just riding on the bike. Like, you get used to that activity because your body adapts to it and makes you stronger, faster, fitter, whatever. The downside to that is, you do hit a plateau. Like, you do get stuck to a point where it's like, okay, I'm not going to get any stronger or faster or fitter unless I ask my body to do something harder than what I was doing yesterday. And that's the big premise to kind of the organization of how we need to structure our training and make sure that we're continually pushing ourselves to, like, tackle the next incremental jump. So I'm going to add 5 pounds to the barbell each time that I do, every 3rd day or whatever, every time that I train and do squats, I'm going to add 5 pounds. And by doing that, like, it's just a little bit extra stress than it was the last time. So my body recognizes that and say, okay, we're going to get 5 pounds stronger than we were last time we did this. Same thing on the rower. Like, okay, I'm going to go a little bit faster this time, or a little bit farther than I did last time. And your body will respond to that too. And then that way your performance keeps increasing. And, that we talk about, like, needing to change it up. And, sometimes there is a need to make bigger changes in the program, but a lot of people take that to the extreme and say, like, well, I just need to do something random all the time. that's kind of like the opposite end of the spectrum. It's kind of what CrossFit has got into and kind of preaches a little bit. And it's like, our workouts are random because you're trying to prepare for something that's unknown and unknowable. And it's like, well, that makes sense. And like, I also work with, some people that are in police, fire, and military. And it's like, that really describes like the physical needs of their job, because a cop goes out on any given day. He doesn't know if he's going to be sitting in his cruiser all day, or if he's going to have to fight 3 or 4 dudes, or if he's going to have to sprint and tackle somebody. Like, he has no idea. So like, he's got all these, very different needs that he may have to tackle physically. And like, how do I train for that? And it's like, well, we'll just have you do like random training. And it's like, well, no, that'll work for a little while. Like, if you're starting from a point that you're out of shape, but we can structure that and kind of break it down and say like, well, you'd probably be better off if you were really strong. And you also need to be able to sprint after somebody. Are you going to need to be able to jog at all? No, probably not. There's never going to be a time that you're just jogging down the street after somebody. So like, we're going to focus on strength. We're going to focus on sprinting. And those are going to cover almost all these different categories of things that you would have to do. And that's basically what we have to do for, the dirt bike rider or any kind of moto rider is like, where do you fall on that spectrum? Are you a racer? Are you a trail rider that wants to do 2 or 3 day long rides? Are you somewhere in between, and kind of tackle that and figure out like, what's the best set of categories that we can train that will match up with what you're actually doing on the bike.
I love that. And I love that concept. Let's talk about, something that we touched on a little bit earlier, just the strength and like linebacker size. Because if people look at the pictures of you, they'll go, "Hey, he looks like he could play in the NFL." And that's not really what I'm going for. And that's how I feel. I'm 165, 170 pounds, depending on the week. And what I want to do is I want to get stronger, but I don't necessarily want to add a ton of bulk. But let's talk about how that strength is really going to help us on the bike. And because you talked about in your outline about becoming more durable and extending your riding career and just being able to stand up on the bike. So let's riff on that for a second here of why, because you already touched on it, that some guys are a little bit leery, especially in the riding community, the moto community. They're a little bit leery. I think they look at some of the professionals like the Eli Tomac's or the Ken Roxons or even, back in the day, the Ryan Villapoto and Ricky Carmichael and these guys, and they're all going, "Hey, all these guys are 5'7" or 5'9", and they weigh like 140 pounds. So isn't that how I should look?" What's your counter argument to that? We've already kind of touched, but let's go on that a little bit more. Talk about some of these benefits of getting a little stronger, adding 10 pounds of weight. How's that really going to help us?
Yeah. And I'll start with my anecdotal story on that is like, when I first started getting into dirt bikes, I'd been riding supermoto, I'd been riding street bikes and stuff. I'd never had to ride much where I needed to move around nearly as much, and definitely not stand up as much as I did when I started riding dirt. And, back then, like, I wasn't training like I do now. So I wasn't strong. And it's like, you get on that dirt bike and you go ride at the off-road park, and it's like, after 5 minutes, you're forced to sit down. Like, your legs are just so shot that you can't stand up anymore. So like, when that happens, like, you're sitting down, which means you can't control the bike as well, which means your suspension doesn't work as well. And like, you crash more. And then it's just like this downward spiral of fatigue. It's like, my legs are already tired. And then I crashed because I hit a bump and got, bucked up in the air. And now I got to pick the bike back up and I've got to kickstart it. And now I'm even worse off in terms of fatigue. And then I crash again, and just like, go through a few stages like that. And then you start to question yourself, like, okay, maybe I should just stick to the pavement stuff. But then I started training, started doing the squats and deadlifts and stuff, and got stronger. And the first thing that I noticed is like how much longer I could stand up on the bike. I went from struggling to stand up for 15 to 20 minutes at a time to being able to stand up all day long, no problem. wake up, do it again the next day, and not be tired or sore a couple of days after that. So that was a huge change in terms of my thinking as to, how much it really mattered for the cyclist. And,
yeah.
The other things that we talk about is like, not just standing up on the bike, but like, I think some people don't realize like how much better you're able to control everything. Like when you have really strong hips and legs and your core is strong, and you can just kind of, you're using your hands to input steering and stuff too, and kind of, throw the bike down underneath you. But like if you got strong hips, like you just kind of turn a little bit and the bike just like falls into the corner. And, it makes that so much easier, and like you don't get tired from it. The durability thing is certainly huge. Like my kind of tongue in cheek saying is that weak people get thrown off of bikes and they break. Strong people get thrown off of bikes and they bounce. And I'm going to knock on wood here, and this is another anecdotal story, but I've never broken a collarbone. I've had a bunch of separated shoulders that you pick the bike up and you keep riding, but I've never had a broken bone from riding. And part of that, I have to believe, is from the increased bone density that I get from strength training. So, that's something that we're not just going to benefit from on the bike, but in life in general. Like if you're lucky enough to make it to 85, 90 years old, one of the biggest problems that we see in seniors of that age is like they're just kind of fragile. And all it takes is one fall and you've got a broken femur or a broken hip or whatever. And like, those are bad news for people of that age. They don't come back and recover well from stuff like that. Like the mortality rate of somebody above 80 that breaks a hip is really, really high. And that's sad. And because it doesn't really have to be like that. It's easy to add a little strength training for anybody, especially as they age, and kind of start thinking about bone density and just general durability, either on the bike or just in life in general. Definitely the extension of the riding career too. Like, I know personally that once I started training, like, I've had bad knees since I was in high school. I had knee surgery, it's almost 20 years ago, but, I had knee pain, every day, all the time. Both my knees would just kind of ache and hurt. And like somehow, for whatever reason, when I started squatting, the knee pain went away. I train people all the time through the chiropractic office that have really bad back pain, just chronic back pain, sciatica and stuff like that, where they get the nerve pain that goes down their leg. And I'm not gonna say that goes away all the time, but I have yet to train anyone that came in and, tried the stuff that I wanted to show them and wanted to get them started on, that didn't have improvement in their symptoms and didn't feel better. So, if you're the beat up ex-racer that doesn't think you can ride anymore just because it makes you hurt so bad, maybe it's an issue of just not being strong enough.
Yeah.
And, get stronger, the muscles feel better, your joints feel better. There's a hormonal and chemical component to that as well. People talk a lot about like the runner high thing, and, runners that run really long distances, like they get this burst of endorphins, like past 20 miles or something like that. Well, the same type of thing happens, but on a smaller scale every time that you weight train. My wife, she can tell when I haven't trained in a while. I get grumpy and get irritated and stuff. She's like, you need to go train, need to go get a workout in. And, every time you come back feeling better, you feel better about life. And it's definitely, chemically induced, hormonally induced, but it's a real thing. So, that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. That's definitely something for me. I feel, and maybe in my cynical mind, I think when I don't work out or I haven't worked out enough in a given week, I feel terrible about myself. And I'm like, sometimes I think it's just me making that up in my mind that I may be losing some ground that I gained. But I do feel better about myself. I don't always feel better physically after I work out, but I feel better mentally that I've just accomplished something if I keep my workouts up. Something that that popped into my head while you were talking is just kind of a power output thing when I'm out on the bike, and how that affects my ride and how much power I'm outputting, really can affect everything. The thought that I had was, if I go riding with my boys, I could ride all day long and I barely even ever break a sweat. With my sons, then I have another guy that I go ride with a lot, and he weighs more than me, and he's just stronger than me. He's just stronger in basically every single way. He's probably 20, 25 pounds heavier than me, and he's a very good rider. And when I ride with him, I'm sweating like crazy. I have to take my goggles off every time I stop, and he'll just sit there and he leaves his goggles on. And the reason why is because he's not even that hot,
Yeah.
and because his power output, for whatever reason, we're doing the same stuff, we're going up the same trails, but one of us is working harder than the other, and that's me. And so I'm just gassed, I'm sweating, I'm winded, and I'm sitting there going, I'm working out all the time. How come this isn't getting easier? And the only thing that makes any sense to me is because that guy is stronger than me. His muscle, he's stronger than me, and so he can do. And then some of it too is he's not wasting as much energy because his skill level is a little higher, which is another whole thing we could get into, because I feel like there's a lot of wasted energy that we do. And one of the things we do as dirt bikers is we get better at not wasting so much energy and using the bike with us and not fighting the bike. But in this case, I sit there and I go, I think that the reason why he always looks like he is having a little bit better time than me is because he's stronger than me. And that's what I need to, that's my takeaway from some of this is I just need to get a little bit more strength, and it's going to make some of these things so much easier for me to do.
Yeah. The skill level thing is definitely something we should point out too. And that's, the best ones are like, you're riding, trail riding or racing or whatever. And like you pull over and stop, and you look over and you see the heavy set guy. And not only is he not out of breath, but he's smoking a cigarette. It's like, man, that's not even fair. So, you've got to think like you're right. Like he's stronger. He's able to move the bike and do a lot of things that the weaker person can't do. But that skill level is the trump card. But then you got to ask yourself, like, okay, what happens when he turns up the crank a little bit and he tries to ride as hard as you are relative to your skill level? If your skill level is lower than his, but you're riding at 90% and he's also starts riding at 90%, he's going to be faster than you. But if he's that out of shape, even though he's stronger, what's going to happen to his performance?
Yeah, he might not be able to sustain it later.
Right. And that's kind of like the equalizer too. And like, that's one of the things that, we talked about this earlier, but the skill component of riding is so important. And obviously, I would never say like, if you want to get better as a rider and you're choosing between seat time and gym time, go ride your bike. Unless you're, already riding 5 or 6 times a week, a professional level rider that you get all the riding time that you want, your time for improvement is probably best spent on the bike. If you're a guy like me that struggles to find time to load the bike up and go ride, I know that, my fitness level now, like if I want to go faster, like I'm probably fit enough to keep up with my skill level. So that's what we're aiming for most people is like, okay, let's design a program that works around their schedule and includes riding in it so that we can make sure that their fitness level is always high enough that they can ride like right up to the top of their skill level. It doesn't impede, it doesn't slow you down because you're out of shape. You can ride as fast as your skill level allows you to, and your fitness level is always right there or above that level and says, okay, we got more in a tank physically wise. I got plenty of strength in reserve. I got conditioning in reserve so that I can improve my skills when I'm on the bike. And that's a big thing to consider. Because like, a lot of times what happens is you see it in brand new riders and you see it in riders that are coming back after a long layoff. You're talking like, a year or two off of the bike. They're trying to improve their skill level again at the same time that they're trying to improve their fitness, and they're trying to do it all at the same time on the bike. And it's just like this, everything's falling apart at the same time. And you kind of get into that vicious downward circle that we talked about. Like, you get tired because you can't stand up and you're crashing, and now you're even more tired. And it's not a good situation to be in. So, that's one argument for, I want to be fit enough so that my time on the bike is productive and I can work on my skills and I can work on line choice and looking up the trail and doing different things without having to worry about like, am I crashing physically? Am I breathing so hard that I'm going to have to stop here at the next pull off or whatever?
Yeah.
I did want to come back on the strength side of it too. It's like, you mentioned like the fear of wanting to get, not wanting to get too big. And why are all the pros these little guys?
Yeah.
And, that's an interesting question. And, I would say that not all those guys are tiny. Every once in a while, like a bigger guy will come along. And that's certainly the case too in off-road riding. Like you see more bigger guys in off-road than you would in supercross, maybe even motocross.
Yeah.
So, that brings up an interesting question is like, why is that? Are they not in as good of shape as, Ricky Carmichael back, not Ricky now, but Ricky.
Hey, Ricky's losing some weight now. He's trimming out. He's trimming up.
He's looking good again. Yeah. But he, more power to him, man. Like if you do what Ricky did and you want to get fat after that, you go right ahead, Ricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's looking good again. But those fast guys, I think it comes down to, it's a matter of their skill level being so high that it kind of just trumps their physical condition. And, those guys were in really good, cardio and anaerobic cardio shape. I'll give that to them. There's those guys train hard and they train hard in that stuff. Were they strong? No, most of them were not strong. Most of them are not strong at that level. Could they maybe even get a little bit better physically if they were better about how they train their strength training? I would say yes. But again, it's a question of like, their skill level is just so dang high. I'm not sure how much the physical improvement is actually going to make them better when they're, already just like unbelievably fast and able to do these just, truly unbelievable things.
Yeah.
Like you watch them do stuff and it's like, oh, I saw what happened there, but I don't understand it.
Yeah. And sustain it for anywhere, from 20 minutes to an hour or something like that.
Right. Yeah. But, for normal guys like us and, we're worried about that thing where it's like, hey, I want to get better on the bike. So I want to make sure that I'm in as good a shape as I can be so it doesn't affect my improvement, my skill improvement. Can I get stronger without adding a bunch of weight? The answer to that is definitively yes. Like you don't have to gain, 20 pounds, 50 pounds, whatever to get stronger. And, so that's a big misconception. It's like, you don't have to be the 250 pound linebacker to be able to improve your riding through increased strength on the bike. And, the basics there is like, this, going back again to like how the body adapts to stuff, like most programs are kind of random and throwing a bunch of stuff at you and talking about muscle confusion and, which isn't really a thing. They don't take advantage of our body's ability to get stronger a little bit each workout. So like if I squat today, like, say I started you on a strength training program, brought you into my gym, we're going to squat, we're going to overhead press, we're going to deadlift, and then we're going to do some conditioning after that. So today we're going to find the amount of weight that you can squat, and I'm going to show you how to do it, teach you how to do it. I'm going to have you squat with proper form. We're just going to find a moderate weight that you can do, somewhat comfortably without your form breaking down. And you're going to do 3 sets of 5, and then you're going to do 3 sets of 5 on the overhead press, and we're going to do the same thing on the deadlift. And then you're going to come back in 2 days later, and we're going to add 5 pounds to the bar on everything. And you're going to do that all again. And it's probably not going to feel any harder than it did the day before, the session before. And you're going to do that again on Friday, another 5 pounds. And you just keep doing that over and over and over and over. And it's like, such a small increase that your body's like, okay, that's not a big deal. Like, I just did 5 pounds less than this last time, so I could do it again. It does start to feel harder, but what happens is like those small incremental adaptations stack up so fast that before you know it, you blink your eyes and you went from squatting 100 pounds to 300 pounds in 2 months. And it's like, I know there's people out there right now that think like, well, that's bullcrap. Nobody can do that. Well, I promise you, I do this all the time. Normal people, young people, old people, everybody can do this. Everybody can take advantage of these physical adaptations this way because that's how our body is built. So the other big part of that is like, you're training, which is a stress, and then you have to go home and you have to recover from that, which means I have to eat and I have to sleep. So if you don't do those things, your adaptation won't happen as well. So if I train and then I go on, I get a work assignment and I've got to work 48 hours straight without sleeping, that's going to affect your body's ability to adapt from that. And then when you go do your next workout, it's going to feel really hard instead of, I go home, I eat, I sleep like normal, get enough calories, get a good 8 hours of sleep, come back the next time. It's like, oh, that's not that much harder, even though I added weight. So that's a huge part of it as well. And there's a huge difference too in like how you're going to be able to adapt depending on like where you're starting, what your physical starting state is. Like if you're really underweight, just like really, really skinny, it's going to be harder for you to get stronger and add muscular body weight than, somebody that's maybe a little chubby when they get started. And the difference there is like the chubby guy has all these physiological resources that the body can pull from. Say like, hey, we got extra calories in storage. We can start using that stuff. And we use it to, build new muscle tissue and make the bones denser and all that other stuff. And, the skinny guy just doesn't have that. So the skinny guy is going to have to eat a little bit more to gain that 10 pounds. Whereas the chubby guy may not lose any weight at all, but his body composition is going to change. He's going to lean up. Fat doesn't directly turn into muscle, but we can break down that fat, use it as energy, use that to build new muscle. And you see that dude that's like, maybe he starts around, 200, 220 pounds or something like that. And he's just kind of like a little soft around the midsection. Like the fat around his waist goes away. His arms, his shoulders, his legs all get bigger. And it's like, you start at 220, you end at 220, but now your strength tripled and your body composition is a lot better and your bike doesn't feel any difference. You still weigh 220 on the bike, but your ability to control the bike and your ability to stand up and everything are so much improved. And that's where the sweet spot is. It's like, taking that athlete that, didn't really gain any weight, or even the lighter guy that, had to gain maybe 10, 15, 20 pounds in order to utilize that stress recovery adaptation process. And it's like, hey, we just tripled their ability to perform on the bike and stand up all day and go for those longer rides. And it's a really cool thing.
I love that. What are some of the most important workouts that people could be doing, say, from home? Let's say they don't have access to you or to an online coach or to a gym. What are some of the best workout methods that they should be focusing on as a dirt bike rider? Is it the squats, the deadlifts? Is it a rower? Is it a stationary bike, hill runs? I mean, what types of things are we talking about? What would you recommend?
Yeah. To start that off, I would say the first thing that we want to think about is like keeping things simple. We talked about like figuring out what our goals are and then breaking that down and figuring out like what we actually need to improve. And there's, 3 main things from that. There's strength, there's aerobic cardio, and that's, aerobic cardio is like how hard can you work when your heart rate's a little bit lower. You're breathing hard, but you're not maxed out. And then the third category is anaerobic cardio. How hard can you work how much work can you do when your heart rate is redline? When you're pushing as hard as you can on the bike, how many can you do a full lap like that? Can you ride that hard for 5 or 10 minutes? and catch up to your buddy. So we're looking at those three categories: strength, aerobic cardio, anaerobic cardio. And within those things, there's different ways we can train each one. For the guy at home that doesn't have, if you don't have a gym membership, the best case scenario is like you've got access, you got your own barbell, you've got a rower or a bike or something like that. And that's really all you need to get started. A barbell with some weights, a rower, and a bike or one or the other, or a ski erg is almost as good. You can even do sprints and stuff like that. But, we're going to look at that specific physical target. Like, I need to get stronger. I need to improve aerobic cardio. I need to improve anaerobic cardio. And we're going to pick the exercises that are going to give us the most bang for the buck. We don't want to do, that's the other big thing with riders is they prefer to be out riding, right? Like, if I gave you the choice, Kyle, like, do you want to spend 3 hours a week in the gym, or do you want to spend 3 extra hours a week out on the bike? Which would you prefer? You're gonna pick the bike because it's actually fun. So we don't want to have these big extravagant workouts that take 2 hours to finish and use 20 different movements and a bunch of different exercises and stuff like that. Like, we want to pick one exercise that can do several different things for us. And we also kind of want to separate and make sure that we're training each of those categories separately, because like you can't really train strength and aerobic cardio at the same time. I say you can't really do that. Like, you can do it for a little bit. If you're just getting started, there's this thing called the novice effect. When you're weak, when you're out of condition, you're out of shape, like almost anything you do exercise wise is going to make you a little bit stronger, and it's going to make you a little bit more fit. But that only lasts for so long. We talked about that plateauing effect, and it's like, well, that'll last for 4 to 6 weeks before it stops working, and then I've got to find a new method. So we want to start with the method that's going to give us 6 months of progress, 12 months of progress, whatever, something that we can hopefully use for the rest of our life. So in terms of what works the best for building strength, it's going to be stuff like barbell training. And the reason why barbells over dumbbells or kettlebells or something like that, like, one, the barbell is just like easy to use. It's ergonomically friendly. It's easy to hang on to. It's also very easy to add like small amounts of weight. We talked about like making that 5-pound jump each time we do our squats. It's not easy to do something like that with a kettlebell, because kettlebells only come in, bigger jumps. Dumbbells, you can find some that have those smaller weight increments. But the other thing that's hard with dumbbells and kettlebells is like, once I start getting strong, I've got to think about like how I'm actually hanging on to this weight. Squat, you can put it on your back and it's going to stay there. Can you imagine trying to squat with, holding on to 200-pound kettlebells or dumbbells somehow on your body? It's like, it becomes physically prohibitive the stronger you get. Same thing with like a deadlift or a bench press or an overhead press or something like that. The barbell is going to be the easier tool because it's just a little bit easier to use, a little bit easier to load. It is bigger. It takes up a lot of space on the floor, so it's not quite as convenient. If you want to squat, you need to be able to have a squat rack and stuff like that. It takes up more space. That's not to say that you can't, use those other tools, that you can't use dumbbells, you can't use kettlebells and still get strong. It's just not going to be as effective over the long term. And then cardio wise, like, there's so many different things that you can do and you can use, but we'll talk about some of the main ones. In terms of your aerobic cardio, how much can you work with your heart beating below like that threshold where it's like, oh my God, I got to stop. That how much work can I do at a pace that I could do all day long? Honestly, the best way for most people to improve that is going to be riding. And it's going to be the best way. It's going to be the way that most people are going to most readily want to do and want to use. If I'm working on my aerobic cardio, I want to get that in as many times as I can on the bike. And that's, that type of training is just like, going out for a nice kind of moderate pace ride, just get a bunch of seat time, If you want to, you could, you pick some drills and stuff that you could do, and have some, if you're trail riding, you can pick some points on the trail, like, okay, I'm going to ride this part a little bit faster, but most of the time it's just, getting your butt in the seat for as long as you can. And then the other type of cardio training, the anaerobic that we talked about, that's going to be a little bit harder to train on the bike. Because anaerobic training, like, you need to be pushing yourself physically really hard. And, for a newer rider or a less skilled rider, that's probably going to be, a little more dangerous.
Yeah.
To be pushing yourself that hard physically, you may be overriding your skill level, and that's not a situation that you want to be in. So for most people, I would say, like, hey, we're going to find another way that you can train that methodology. We're going to have you do, hill sprints. We're going to have you do sprints on the rower or sprints on the bike. Another really good tool is something called a prowler. It's basically just like a sled that you would push. You can do stuff like that. There's all kinds of methods that you can use, but, sprints, rower sprints, bike sprints are going to be your best bet for the anaerobic conditioning.
And when you say sprints, how long are we talking about? 100 meters, 500 meters? What's a good sprint?
Yeah, good.
Say we're doing a rower.
Yep. So to train that specific area, if you're the type of rider that needs that training, and maybe we can break that down here next and talk about, like, the different types of riding and, like, how their needs kind of vary. But say you're the maybe, like, the most extreme version is supermoto racing, because, like, supermoto races are almost always really short. Like the races that we used to do, I was racing up in Wisconsin, and we'd do like an 8-lap main event, and lap times were under a minute. So, you're talking, 7 or 8 minutes, maybe 6 minutes for a really short main. And it's like, that's a true sprint. Like, you're going all out almost that whole time. So, that type of rider really needs to work on that anaerobic training, because, like, the heart rate's going to be pegged when you're on the bike. And the other thing too about, like, when you wick it up and you try and ride at 100% like that, it's like your fear level goes up too. And guess what that does to your heart rate?
Spikes it, right?
So yeah. So, like, it's a little bit different than what we'd see in the gym. It's like, you can row as hard as you want to, and your heart rate's just going to kind of, settle at this high level. But then, when you're on the bike, it's like, well, now I'm riding as hard as I can. So physically, my heart rate's already going to be right there at the top. But now I almost crash, or, like, I've got the adrenaline of trying to pass somebody or try to hold somebody off. And it goes up even higher. So it's like, extra physical demand on top of that. So, that's kind of like the extreme case, shorter motos, maybe like something like a LCQ, or even, I could see hare scrambles, enduro, something like that, needing that anaerobic burst for the end of the race, or even a trail rider. Like, I've watched your videos, like, you're definitely humble. Like, you're a good rider, and, like, when you wick it up, you're going pretty good. And it's like, those instances, like, you're riding with somebody that's faster, or a group or whatever, you need to bridge that gap and catch back up after you've slowed down or whatever. Like, hey, I've got 5 minutes here where I need to ride close to 100%. I've got to make sure I've got that anaerobic cardio that's gonna take me through that, and not just waste me and, like, cause me to crash. So you asked, like, how would we structure that in terms of a workout? The shorter and more intense, and what I mean by more intense is, like, the more power output that you can put out, the better. So what we see is, like, a lot of people kind of get into this. It's almost like a craze, like the high intensity interval training, the HIIT craze. Like, everybody talks about, like, I'm doing HIIT training. It's like, well, are you really? Because the way this is designed is that you're putting out maximum power output. And, like, on the rower, we're talking, like, you need to be putting out 700, 800, 900 watts, maybe 1,000 watts if you're a bigger dude, and doing that for, let's say, 20 seconds. and, literally going as hard as you can or almost as hard as you can for that very short time increment. And what that does is that's such a stress and such a demand on the system that it starts like all these processes in the background. Like even after you stop rowing that hard for 20 seconds, like you're still breathing really hard. Your heart's still pumping really hard. All these things have to recover to get you ready for the next one. Where the mistake comes in, and what a lot of people do is like they try and make that rest period too short. So they say, okay, I'm going to do like 30 seconds of work and then 30 seconds of rest, and then 30 seconds of work and 30 seconds of rest. What happens is after the first couple of intervals, like they haven't recovered enough to create that high power output level. So they end up just getting slower and slower and slower each interval. And by the end of it, they're just kind of hanging on, trying not to die, trying not to puke.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like this started as one thing and it ended as something completely different exercise wise. So, we want to make that work period short, like in this 10 to 20 second range, make the rest time long. It could be even as long as 2 or 3 minutes, depending on how much power you're able to put out while you're working, and allow yourself to fully recover. So then you can do it again and put out that full level of power the next time.
It's so,
because there's,
it's so funny to hear you say that, because even just yesterday, I pulled up my workout from yesterday in my log, and I had read your email, and I'm looking through it, and I'm like, instead of rowing 5,000 meters today, I'm going to do like 10 sets of like 30 seconds on, 30 seconds off, because it's in my rowing like machine, right? It's one of the workouts. I'm like 30-second sprint, 30-second rest. And what happened is the first one, I warmed up first. I warmed up on the bike. I got my heart rate up a little bit. And then I go to the rower and I start with this 30-second sprint, and I'm putting out as hard as I can. And then I'm resting for those 30 seconds. I'm not fully rested. That next sprint comes up, and each subsequent one, I put out less and less power. And by my 7th set, and all we're talking about here is I'm going to do my 7th set of 30 seconds. So the work period has really only been 7 or 3 minutes. By that 7th one, I said, hell no, I'm resting through this next 30 seconds. And then I rested another 30 seconds. So then I had like a minute 30. I had a 90-second rest there. And then my 8th, 9th, and 11th one, because I wanted to do 10 of these actual power sprints, they were a little better. But what you're talking about is much more rest, because you're saying 20 to 30 seconds on the power and then maybe 2 minutes or something on the rest. And I'm going, man, that would have totally changed my workout yesterday, because I actually would have been able to maybe do much closer to a max power output in those sprint parts. It would have transformed yesterday's workout. So I'm excited to hear that, like, look, if you're going to do these interval things, because all my interval training, every time I've ever done it, it's basically been 1-to-1. It's basically been, if I sprint for 2 minutes, I'll rest for 2 minutes. If I sprint is the wrong word, for 4 minutes, say I sprint for 4 minutes on the rower, which is going to be like 1,000 meters. But if I do that, then I would rest for 4 minutes. So all my workouts have only been 1-to-1. And what you're saying is, let's bring the intensity level even higher and make the rest period longer. And that's how we're going to build our strength, right? One of the ways.
And that's a good point. Is like, when we look at these different types of training, the strength training, the aerobic training, and the anaerobic training, the anaerobic training is going to be a lot closer to the strength training in terms of how you're using your muscles, what energy systems you're actually using inside of the cell to fuel your muscles and stuff like that. So there's additive bang for the buck there, and that, it will help you strength wise. It will help you develop power. But the other follow-on improvements are also really cool in that, like, if you are the type of person that's concerned about like how you look and your body composition and stuff like that, it's like, your body loves these sprint intervals. Like it sees those and it's like, okay, we're gonna burn through fat like, a house on fire. If you're a male, your testosterone's going to go up. it's all these cool secondary benefits from this type of training that you simply don't get. Like if you're more of a distance guy, like you're a runner, jogger, whatever, or all you're doing on the rower is those 5,000 meter up types of pieces. And it's like, the benefits are amazing from that type of stuff. The downside is that it's hard. It's hard to be disciplined and make yourself do a set of 5 or 6 or even more of those. And that's what I'd recommend for somebody that's just getting started. Is like, hey, this is your first day doing this type of training. Like, start conservatively. Don't try and go 100%. Like go say like 80%. Go pretty hard, but not as hard as you can, and just see how it feels. And do 4 of them. Yeah. Do 15 seconds on, minute 45 off. That's an easy way to do it too. Like if you're, just set a timer for 2 minutes, every 2 minutes on the minute, like you do a sprint for 15 seconds, and then you slow down and rest. And that's another thing too, that people I know will ask is like, well, on the rest periods, am I really just resting, or should I still be, rowing or spinning slow? And it's like, if you really want to do this high intensity stuff, just like completely rest, just sit there. Yeah. And because after the second or third one, you won't be able to do like the recovery pace anyway.
Right. And, no, I get that.
Yeah. And, if you're just getting started, like, we talk about work to rest ratio, and like you look at the amount of time that you're doing for your work, compare that to the amount of your rest time, and it should be at least a 1-to-5 ratio. And probably if you're just getting started, it's probably closer to like 1-to-10. So if you're doing 15 seconds of work, you should be resting for 150 seconds. And they're going to be like, man, that seems like a long time. It's 2.5 minutes. But, it allows you to really do the next one with, feeling like you're ready to go, putting in that full amount of power and getting the benefits out of that. Yeah. So, like we look at those 3 different types of training. And like I said, like if you're the rider that's able to, get in 3 or 4 rides a week, awesome. Even like, just 1 or 2 rides a week, that's great. Like you're already getting your aerobic cardio in, and then you can focus on getting stronger, and you can focus on your anaerobic training. But if you're just getting started, I would put the premium on the strength training and worry about that first, and then pick up the anaerobic training as you get more time, or as you start to plateau on the strength training too. But the strength, getting stronger, is going to bring you the most bang for the buck. It's actually going to improve how much work you can do both in the anaerobic and the aerobic situations. Because if you think about it like this, like, the strong guy versus the weak guy, the weak guy may have better cardio, but like you give them a task and say like, okay, we're going to take these 2 guys and we're just going to give them like, they're going to carry 100-pound sandbags up a flight of stairs and just stack them in the upstairs room. And we're going to see which of these 2 guys can do that better. And it's like, well, the weak guy, even though he has much better cardio, like, that 100-pound sandbag is like such a hard task for him. It's going to be hard for him to keep up with the strong dude. And the strong dude's going to be breathing hard after the first time up and down the stairs. But, as long as that doesn't push him too far heart rate wise over the red line, like he can do that all day long, because a 100-pound sandbag for a dude that's pretty strong is just like, it's not a big deal. It's not much heavier than carrying my kids. I can do that all day long. The weak guy's like, man, I'm struggling to carry this up the stairs once, and he may be able to outrun me all day long. But, you start talking about that work capacity thing and like how strength affects that. And it's like, strength is we talked about skill being the trump card in terms of like how fast you're able to ride. Well, strength is the trump card in terms of your physical capacity. It's going to, it's going to give you like this bonus over the people that are in better shape than you, but not quite as strong as you are.
Yeah. Well, I think the more I think about this, I think this is one of the missing pieces of my riding, is because my cardio is pretty good, but I could be stronger than I am now. And I think that will certainly help me. So let's talk about how much time would people want to devote to something like this? Let's say, you're going to give yourself a training regimen, or you're going to get in contact with you, Bill, or some other coach, and they want to do the strength training. So let's separate the time on the bike. Let's just say somebody's been in my situation. I'm just going to be selfish here since I know the most about my situation. I try to ride once a week in the summer. If it's better weather and I've got 4 kids and all this stuff, if I could get 2 rides in a week, that would be great. One's going to be a shorter ride, one's going to be a longer ride. So let's establish I'm going to, get that much time on the bike. So there will be anywhere between 2 to 5 hours of seat time on the bike, in a week. Then I'm going to do this strength training. How much should I allocate towards this? Do I need to be, are these 30-minute workouts or these 45-minute workouts? What does it look like generally?
Yeah, like where we would start ideally would probably be about 3 workouts a week, and they'd start in that 30 to 45-minute range. But that's gonna go back to that idea that we talked about, where I'm that salesman that calls you up and says like, hey, I've got this perfect plan for you, and it's like you may not have 3 extra days to work out. So we'll put that out there and say like that's the ideal place to start. You're going to if you've got 3 days that you can train for 45 minutes, perfect. That's going to be the best place for you to start strength wise. But what I have to do is like, I'm working with real people that have real obligations. They got families, they got jobs. They may say like, hey, I can only strength train twice a week. It's like, great. That's better than nothing. Let's get started on a 2 times a week program, and go from there. The other thing too is like, I've worked with people, like law enforcement people that or fire department that have shift work. And it's like, well, I work for 48 hours straight and then I get, 2 or 3 days off or whatever. Can I train back to back, Monday and Tuesday, and then I'm off. Then I got to work Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then I can train Saturday, Sunday. Can I do that? And it's like, yeah, you can do that, but it's not ideal because then you're kind of cutting out that recovery time in between your workouts that your body needs to be able to adapt. So, the ideal program is like you would train Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Each session is going to start probably in that 40 to 45-minute range. And then you just kind of go from there. Now, the downside to getting stronger is that the workouts end up taking longer just because it takes you longer to warm up and you end up having to rest a little bit longer in between your work sets. And that's another interesting point that a lot of people, as they're getting started in strength training, they overlook. Because like we've got this idea in our head, like, I got to get into the gym. I got to be working the whole time. So I'm going to do, I'm going to do squats, but then I'm going to do push-ups in between. And it's like, well, that's not a bad idea if all you were concerned about is like burning the maximum amount of calories. Mm-hmm. But, our time in the gym or our time spent in the garage or the basement with the barbell should be focused specifically on getting you as strong as you can, as fast as you can. So we're going to wipe out that other stuff that you were doing in between sets. You're going to warm up a little bit. You're going to work up to whatever your work weight is for that day. You're going to do a set of 5 squats, rack the bar, and then you're just going to rest for a little bit. And when I say a little bit, I mean, 3 to 5 minutes. And most people hear that and they're like, oh my God, that seems like such a long amount of time just to be sitting there doing nothing. And it is like, it feels like, what am I doing here? But as you get stronger, you quickly realize like, hey, I need that 5 minutes to recover in between these sets. If I don't take 5 minutes, I don't do all 5 reps on the next set just because it's gotten that much harder. So that, that's one downside to the strength training is the workouts do get longer as you get into it. But there's ways around that. Like you can start, like if you're doing 3 exercises in a given workout, like you can kind of warm up on your next one while you're doing your first one and cut some time out like that. And then I also like to, for somebody like you that doesn't necessarily want to work out unless he has to, like, spend an extra workout day is like, I would include your rowing time at the end of your strength workout. So we're going to put in, 15 or 20 minutes on the rower, on your skier or your bike, where you can get in those sprint intervals at the end of the workout. And then you've got, those other 2 days off. and you've got 2 riding days. So, you're basically training or riding 5 days out of the week. You got 2 rest days. And that's a pretty solid way to start for most people. And like I said, everybody has their unique situation. So, the coach has to learn to be flexible and say like, okay, I'm going to work around your schedule and your lifestyle. At the same time, like the other thing I want to do too is like, I want to present the optimal plan first. Say like, here's what we would do if time wasn't a factor and you could get into the gym or get into the basement and work out as many times as you wanted to. We'd do it like this. If that doesn't work, we'll figure out a plan that works for you.
That's cool. And with these, so ideally, start out with 3 workouts a week, 30 to 45 minutes. That includes the rest time, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Good. And that makes it a little bit less scary, because if you're going to be, having these big rests in between, I'm looking at this and I'm going, so does that mean this is a 3-hour workout? Because if I'm doing 30 minutes of work and then all the rest in there, I'm like, wait a second, this isn't going to work for me. But it makes it a little bit more realistic. So
that's the other thing that people don't get. And like we talk about these misconceptions surrounding the strength thing. And like, if somebody came to me and said like, well, what are your workouts like? And it's like, well, wait a minute, that has nothing to do with what you're going to be doing. I am physically different than somebody that's just getting started, because I need a different stimulus, a different amount of stress for me to achieve this, next level of strength. The guy that's just getting started, it's like easy. Like your body is not adapted to this training stress. So it's like, hey, these 30-minute workouts work just fine. Now, after you've been training for, 5-10 years or whatever, and you're really strong, the 30-minute workout doesn't cut it. But, most people that are only concerned with getting strong enough to increase their performance on the bike, they don't ever have to worry about that. And it's like, I can get quite a bit stronger doing these shorter workouts. This is working great for me. And it almost becomes like a maintenance thing. If you ride your bike hard and you ride it a lot, you got to change the oil, you got to change your bearings, you got to get new tires, you got to do all this normal stuff. And it's like, we got to do the same thing with our bodies too. It becomes a maintenance item that we've got to check off and say like, yeah, I did that. I'm ready to go ride. And, a lot of coaches, a lot of strength coaches too, that are used to working with, athletes that, maybe a strength athlete, like a power lifter or a strongman or something like that. Like those guys, they truly care. Like I want to get as strong as I possibly can. With, if I'm working with a moto guy, it's like, for me, strength is a means to an end. Strength is a way to get faster. So, I've learned it's, something you got to learn as a coach is like, you got to pick your battles. You got to learn to, make sure that your program for the client aligns with their goals. And it's, it's something we get caught up in as strength coaches too. And like you said, I think I'm good at recognizing that, because I do understand that, most of us just want to go ride, and I'm in that boat too. I'd rather spend time on the bike than in the gym. And so it's a little bit easier for me, I guess.
Yeah. As we wrap up here, just talk about injuries while weightlifting. The first thing that when I told my wife yesterday, kind of after we got off the call, saying, hey, maybe I'll get a barbell here, do some deadlifts, some squats, some things like that, possibly. She looked at me and she's like, well, deadlifts are how I ruptured a disc in my back last year and had to have surgery. And she's like, so have you thought about that? And I'm like, yeah, so that's a real thing. So can we talk for a little bit about, injuries? It's one of the reasons why I have not been a big time, squat guy or deadlift guy or whatever, because I'm like, hey, I don't want to injure my back. So what's your response to that?
Sure. And, that's a real concern. It's a concern for any sport too. And the counter to that, if I was talking to your wife, I'd say like, well, he's much more likely to get hurt on his dirt bike. And that's, not to give a cop out or anything, because people do get hurt when they're training sometimes. your risk of getting hurt goes down when you're training with good form, like you're supervised by a coach, but it still doesn't erase it completely. There is going to be some risk there. But it's really, really, really small. And, I don't know your wife's case, if she actually got injured, like, while
she was
picking a weight up.
She was deadlifting with a strength coach,
mm-hmm.
and slipped the disc, ruptured the disc, and she had to have surgery. And it was not a fun thing. And so obviously, and she's like, well, I think in her situation, she told me, she's like, well, I didn't have enough rest because my hamstrings were super sore. So she's like, one thing I learned from that is I had done too intensive a workout the day or two or whatever it was before. Her hamstrings were totally sore. And then she's like, and so that threw my form off. And the next thing you know, I've got this conditioning coach pushing me to do a certain thing. And next thing you know, we're having back surgery. And that's been one of the negatives that's kind of come along with, not to bash CrossFit. It was a CrossFitter coach. She wasn't doing quote CrossFit, but it was a CrossFit cult member.
Love
them. I really like the person. She's a wonderful woman. But Karen got injured from it, and it's like you were in the presence of a professional doing her workouts, and that cost us $30,000, and now it changed your life,
Yeah. And to back up, there are like really, really good CrossFit coaches and CrossFit gyms out there that kind of know how to stay away from, pushing people towards the point that, they're at a higher risk of injury. Cause, CrossFit's all about like, working your butt off, every workout you're gonna go in there and bust your butt. And they do some stuff with heavier weights. And it's like when you combine those two things where you're fatigued, it's going to be harder to control your form, and you're trying to move heavier weights and stuff. And it's like, it's kind of a recipe for disaster. So, like I said earlier, like the best thing you can do is separate those things.
And
like,
so much of it is timed too. It's like, hey, we're going to do this one and we're going to move straight over to this one. Whereas what you're talking about is a systematic, engineered approach to this where we're going to have rest time, and we're not so concerned about getting this other workout in while we keep our heart rate up and muscle confusion and all this other stuff. So I know there were other elements at play there, but I just wanted to hear you kind of talk about it.
Yeah. So I won't say that, you won't get injured. Like there is a chance that you'll get injured. Like I tore my rotator cuff while I was training. And it's the only injury I've ever had. And, I think there is a difference between an injury and a tweak. Like, what your wife had was certainly an injury. My rotator cuff tear was an injury. You see what's more common is like, like a tweak, and like you can get a tweak, like getting out of bed, like you have a muscle spasm in your back or something like that. Like, the common aches and pains and stuff like that are a lot more common than, some kind of serious injury that requires a surgery or requires you to be off the bike or out of the gym for an extended period of time. Those are rare, but they do happen. And I'll say that they are less likely to happen with smart training, especially if you're able to train under the supervision of a good coach that really is concerned with coaching with the movement quality and good form. That tends to go out the window sometimes in some of the CrossFit gyms, and they just kind of let them thrash about and go at it in the name of getting hot and sweaty. And like you said, they're exercising for time, and that's, it gets people in pretty good shape if they're just coming off the couch, but it's, the long-term prospects of that are not good in terms of keeping people healthy. And it's actually an interesting question too, when you think about the business model. It's like, man, if a lot of my people are getting hurt, like, is my business model a good one? But anyway, that's a legit question. And I would say that there is some risk there. The risk of a serious or even catastrophic injury is pretty low. It's actually one of the more technical papers that I'm working on right now is like, especially with deadlifts, like people are genuinely scared that like they're going to have this serious spinal injury from deadlifting. And it's like, you hear people talk about it online and stuff. And there's even videos, you'll see a video of like a guy passing out while he's deadlifting, and people will say like, oh, he must have severed his spinal cord and he's like fell over dead. It's like, no, that is not what happened. Like, and I suppose it could happen. It could happen if like the guy had some kind of physical defect or something like that. But if you look at the evidence on injuries, like spinal injuries, where we have like, shattered vertebra or a severed spinal cord or, a seriously damaged spinal cord, like stuff doesn't happen like that outside of car accidents, industrial accidents, falls, accidents where there's something heavy falling on top of a person. It's not the type of thing that happens like when you're picking a weight up off the floor.
Yeah.
Now, something like that could happen in the weight room. Like if you're doing something really stupid and a bar falls on you, yeah, that could really hurt you. But, more often than not, you're not going to have that type of accident that happens where, your spine is damaged such that, you're going to lose function. Can you injure a disc or something like that? Sure. Like, your wife's sounds like a good case of that. And it sucks too. And it's like, man, I was just here trying to improve myself and get better. And it's like, now I got to have surgery, and I'm sure she has follow-on effects from that too.
Yeah. She had drop foot for a while, and she still can't feel her foot. So the feeling in her foot is probably never going to come back. It goes all the way from her foot up to mid calf that is numb 2 years later.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and that's, for me as a coach, like that's sad to hear. And obviously like what happens in my gym isn't always going to happen, isn't the truth everywhere else. But like, I don't have injuries like that. Like I've had a few, we've had a couple muscle tears, and like, those tend to not be as big of a deal as people would expect either. Is like, what we have in our mind is like, okay, somebody tore their hamstring. It's like, you would picture somebody like laying on the floor, like screaming in pain, rolling around. It's like, well, that's not really what happens at all. It's like they're squatting and they feel something weird, and they come back up and they rack the bar, and it's like, man, like I've got this weird feeling in my hamstring. It feels really tight. And then you have them move around for a while, and if it really starts to tighten up, or like, if it's a big tear, you can start to see a bruise right away.
Yeah.
And like, like, okay, they tore some muscle tissue there. Here's the crazy thing. Like in cases like that, the best way to help them heal is to keep them moving. So like, say like, okay, I know your hamstring hurts, but you're going to come back in tomorrow, and we're going to do some squats without weight, just basically like sitting down to a chair and standing back up.
Yeah.
And it's going to hurt like crazy, but we're going to do a bunch of those reps to keep the blood flowing. And it's actually going to help the tissue align so it can heal better. So you don't have this big scar tissue, bunch in the hamstring that's more likely to get hurt again. And like, you take them through that, and it's amazing how fast they recover. And that's basically what I did with my rotator cuff tear. Like I hurt my shoulder doing an overhead press, and I was actually training for a competition, and, I felt it pop, and I was like, oh, that felt weird. And I finished the set that I was doing, and, I could still move okay. And because I was warm, hot and sweaty and stuff, and it like didn't start swelling or hurting right away. And I did 2 more sets after that and finished it. And I could tell that it wasn't right, but it didn't hurt bad enough that it made me want to quit. So, wake up the next day and I can't lift my arm above my head, and I can't put on a shirt or anything like that. And so I think like, my competition's 2 or 3 weeks away. Like I'm not going to be able to lift. I'm done. And I was like, well, I know what I need to do. And I went back into the gym the next day and just, took a wooden dowel rod and, pressed that over my head for about 100 reps just to get the blood moving again. And, just started slowly adding weight day after day after day. And like within a week or two, like I was back to the weights that I was moving before. Now it hurt and it didn't feel right, but I was able to go do the competition and do okay. So I guess the moral of that story is like, there is a chance for injury. A lot of them can be overcome. Usually they're not as severe as like what your wife had happen. And, just for clarity, like, that process that I'm describing, that kind of like rehab process where it's just like, well, we're going to get you moving again. That works for muscle injuries. I would not use that at all for somebody with like, a joint injury or disc injury in their spine or something like that. Like that ends up making it worse. But, yeah, it's, that's a legit concern. And like, you have to weigh that with, the reality of like, how much more likely am I to get hurt on the bike if I continue to ride in the condition that I am, versus the likelihood of, a major injury happening in the gym that requires some kind of surgery. I'd say it's like, it's so far in favor of like, you're better off training than not, that, it's, I wouldn't say don't worry about it, but it's like, know that that's a real thing. Know that that's part of the deal. And the other thing with that too is like you think about like what we're going to be like when we're older. It's like, all of us that ride pretty hard are going to be kind of beat up and have some aches and pains and, walk kind of funny after we get up out of a chair, like once we get into our 60s and 70s. But the ones of us that are still riding at that age are probably the ones that are in good shape and are physically strong right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're going to be better off. The motion is lotion. So I think it's going to be better. I think it's going to be better off to be stronger and physically active as long as we can be. So
yeah. If you're going to have aches and pains, like one way or the other, would you rather be physically capable and strong and still be able to do all the stuff that you want to do and have some aches and pains, or just be like, you're the guy that can't get off the couch and everything still hurts? It's like, well, I'll pick the first one.
Well, we've covered so much here. I just want to thank you for your time. It's been super enlightening, and people are going to have a bunch of questions. If they have questions and they want to contact you, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you and maybe get some training from you?
Sure. Yeah. You mentioned my Instagram already. It's Engineered Strength on Instagram. We're also Engineered Strength on Facebook. You can also go to engineeredstrength.com, or you can send me an email at Bill Hannon, HANNON, at engineeredstrength.com. Any of those methods work. Probably email is probably the best one. But yeah, if you guys got questions, you got questions about what kind of program, you'd want to look at, or, equipment or anything like that, happy to help you guys get started. I love working with riders. It's something I'm passionate about. And, it's like one of the cool things for me is to work with somebody that, is trying to improve their physical capability to get better at something that I'm also interested in. So if I get riders that come to me and it's like, man, this is awesome. And they're like, we're going to sit down and we're going to geek out. We're going to talk about your riding program and, the type of riding that you want to do, what kind of bike you're on, and then, what kind of equipment you got. And it's just something that's kind of for me, it's definitely a fun process. And, I feel like, I've got that good mix of experience as a coach and experience as a rider that can really help people and kind of, and get them started going down the right track. And hopefully what we've talked about today, Kyle, is help people kind of set their mind straight and maybe even open some eyes as to how we should be training and why, and the importance of strength and importance of conditioning and how to go about all that stuff. So I definitely appreciate you having me on and giving me the chance and the platform to talk about this stuff.
Yeah, it's very good. I think it's going to be, I'm definitely going to change my workouts, and I'm looking forward to kind of getting some more feedback and maybe some online coaching from you. So
awesome.
where we are in Utah, I'm in Utah and you're in Indiana. It's going to be tough to be face-to-face, but I think if we can figure out some of this online stuff and you give me some pointers here and maybe even tailored some workouts. So these are all types of things. These are all services that you offer, right? You can do that for people if they want, if they're out of state,
absolutely.
Right? Okay.
Yep. Anything from program design to, full online coaching. So, one of the things that we normally do with the online coaching is like, I not only tell you what to do, but, you can record it on your phone or with a camera. And I use a program that makes it super easy for you to upload your videos and allow me to watch them. And then I can give you feedback. And, the other thing we can do with that is like, we do Skype or Zoom calls and just kind of touch base all the time, talk about how things are going. And it's not as good as, if you were able to come to my gym or, if I was able to come to your house and train you, but I think it's the next best thing. And it's, it makes it really easy and really convenient to reach out to coaches that you may not have in your community and get the benefit of their knowledge and their experience.
Yeah. And with all this,
I will say with the online coaching, like I cannot take more clients until June, just due to the non-compete with the last business that I worked for. But in terms of helping people with setting up a program or anything like that, I can get started on that stuff right away.
That's cool. With all the social distancing we have now, anyway, these telecommuting things are going to be the best way to go until we can get COVID under control. So anyway,
yep. And until there's robots that can sit in your gym and watch you squat and deadlift and press, like I think it's the best way to do it at this point.
Okay. Well, I sure appreciate it, Bill. It's been enlightening, and I think it's going to change the way that I'm working out, and hopefully I can get some benefit from this. And I'm sure that there's other people out there listening that will have the same experience. So thank you so much.
I hope so too. Yeah. Thank you, Kyle.
All right, Bill. Have a good day. All right.
All right. You too.
All right. Bye. Well, that was Bill Hannon. So that was freaking sweet. Went into a lot of stuff there. I legitimately I'm excited to change my workouts a little bit and just start, maybe getting a little bit stronger, because I do feel like I've gotten in a little bit of a rut here, a little bit of a plateau. Bored is maybe not the right word. I've always been bored of my workouts, but that hasn't kept me from doing it. But I want to just get a little bit stronger, I'm small boned. I've got small frame. So a lot of times people think I weigh more than I do. Most of the time people guess my weight 15 to 20, maybe 25 pounds heavier than it actually is. But I wouldn't mind putting on a few more pounds if I could just get stronger. If I could get a little bit stronger, 10, 15% stronger, 20% stronger, 30, whatever it is, I think that'll be an improvement in my riding. I'm not going to become a 235-pound linebacker. I don't care about that. I don't want that. I want to look good for my wife, but ultimately I just want to be a little bit stronger, a little bit more fit that way, so I can do more things, do more work, and feel better and feel good about myself that way. And obviously I think that's going to help me on the bike as well. So again, if you guys want to get in touch with Bill, it's engineeredstrength.com. It's engineered underscore strength on Instagram. And super cool guy, really down to earth. So check out his services if you're interested, and make sure if you're buying stuff for your dirt bike, you're going to use my Rocky Mountain ATV code. It's down in the description here. It's also on my website, and it's on the links on all my YouTube videos. So I think that's what I've got for you today. This is probably the longest podcast I've ever uploaded, but tons and tons of good information. Thank you so much for listening, and let's leave a single track. Thanks, guys.